Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on what part of the country or world that you're tuning in from. Welcome to today's ASSA ABLOY Academy virtual instructor-led training on hospital hardware applications. My name is Katie Flower. I'm your lead instructor. And boy, we had a close call this morning with Zoom. Everything got backed up because school started, a lot of virtual schools started, and it put Zoom in a tizzy and a lot of people couldn't log in, and we got everything fixed. So hopefully your reception is clear and you're able to see the screen without any issues or bandwidth problems. This session is being recorded and will be posted within 24 hours. In fact, within a few hours. So if you need to play catch up, you can always go back to the ASSA ABLOY Academy virtual instructor-led training. And on the top right-hand corner, you can view any of the recordings that you may have missed or that you may want to review. Also, within 24 hours, you will receive a thank you email for your participation. Each individual class is worth 1 credit hour. You can report that to your continuing education if you need to. This session is a little, it's like what we did last week. After each opening, I will open it up to questions. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and I will do my best to answer. Let's jump in. We're going to take a look at a stair door first in this very large hospital. And as you know from the code session, stairs are a little different animal, especially in a high-rise building. But even in low-rise buildings, you do need to allow for stairwell reentry. Let's take a look. This is the basement level of the large hospital. We will be looking at the stair door, but I just wanted to look at the rest of the plan. We're in area F, which is just this small segment here. And as you would expect in the basement, there is a morgue area with laboratory and different functions within, but there are no areas of assembly, which is what you would be looking for, just to make sure hardware-wise that I don't need an exit device on my stair door, and there is no area of assembly. This is the enlarged view. We can see that it is a 90-minute door. That makes sense because any building that is 4 stories or higher, all of the vertical exit stair doors will have 2-hour walls and 90-minute doors. Even though it doesn't say it, this little box right here, it should have the symbol CA for card access. And that means that from the stair side, they want a card reader to be able to access the basement level. And whenever we do this, we know that card access on any kind of stair, unless it's at the level of exit discharge leading to the outside, this door has to be fail-safe so that if there is a fire and somebody is trying to exit up and they smell smoke, they can open the door and find another exit stair to get out of the building. The door is 3'8" by 7 foot. It's a wood door by hollow metal frame, 90-minute. It's actually a metal door in the video, so I don't know if that changed, but it is going to be fail-safe. We'll look at the operations narrative in a little bit, but here is the basic hardware set and the video of the opening. Hang the door, because it is a wide door, we went with the heavyweight bulb anti-friction bearing 5" by 4.5" hinge. The center hinge is the one that will have the electrified through wire, and that is most common because it's a straight shot through the door to the lock. And also the top hinge is the one that's the most load bearing. As this door opens and closes, the top hinge takes the most of the weight of the door. So the center hinge is typically the one that will be used. In the specification set, it does not define the number of wires. That will be defined by the person who is detailing the hardware set. When you write a specification, you can be generic on items like that and sizes and so on. But we need one electric hinge and two standard heavyweight hinges, 5 by 4.5. The stair doors don't get a lot of use, but they are wide and they are heavy doors. And so that's why heavyweight hinges instead of continuous hinges or something else. Yes, you could use continuous hinges if that's what the owner wants, but there's 4 stair towers on every floor, and then multiply that by 18 floors. That gets to be quite expensive. I'd rather use the money on something else like access control. We want to make sure to stay within the budget. The QC option is all of the ASA ABLOY products come with the Electrolynx Harness. And so the McKinney hinge has the quick connect, which just plug and play. The owners love this because it's really easy to troubleshoot the opening. If you do need to troubleshoot the opening, you can take the 4 screws off and pull these plugs apart and plug it into a Wiegand tester. You can test the functionality of the request to exit switch. You can test the functionality of the lock and unlock. You can power on, power off to make sure that it's working as a fail-safe lock. All of those features right there with a handheld device, and diagnose whether it's the lock or the access control system that is the issue. The lock is fail-safe. It's Corbin Russwin Mortise lock, the same series that we've been using, but with the electrified lock, they have a 9 in there, and that plus this little lightning bolt in your specification indicates that that's an electrified product. We see that it's fail-safe, which means when the power is out, this will be unlocked. It does have key override, and the basement side has a free egress lever that gets you into the stair. We used a mortise lock instead of an exit device because there's no areas of assembly, and an I2 occupancy does not require exit devices on any doors really, unless both leaves are needed for exit purposes. And that would be like your double egress cross quarter doors. Take a look at the other options. The 109X is the lever and the rows. We're using the same lever and rows that we use on the rest of the project. The M92 is the request to exit switch, which will be on the basement side. So if somebody is walking through the door, that can signal the security panel to say this is a valid exit and not send the door into alarm. It is prepped for interchangeable core temporary construction. The permanent core will be ordered separately from Medico. The closer will be a regular arm. The rule of thumb, DHI Door Hardware Institute teaches that you keep the door closer on the inside of the room, the inside of the stair, so that as you're walking down a corridor, you don't see closers in the hallway. Obviously, if you've got a corridor door, like a double egress door, there are some cases where you do have to see the door closer. But for the most part, the rule of thumb is to keep it on the inside of the room, inside of the stair. Regular arm application. The specification set calls for regular arm / parallel arm as required. Again, generic, so that whoever is detailing this would select the appropriate arm and mounting method to let the contractor know. Protecting the door, just a standard kick plate and wall stop. Nothing fancy here. And smoke seal, even though smoke seal is not required on a 90-minute hollow metal door, it is a best practice, very inexpensive. And as I mentioned in previous sessions, it's not only good for smoke, but it cuts down on noise and it cuts down on odors. The Electrolynx harness is a separate line item, and again, it's generic in the specification set, the QC with the CXXX, and then when you detail this based on the width of the door and the type of lock, you would select the appropriate model number for each of the doors in that set. Remember that this project was written back in anywhere between 2011 to 2014. And so back then, this was a solenoid-driven lock set. And a solenoid will get very hot. Fail-safe means that it's powered all the time. So the Smart Pack that HES sells can be used for lock sets. It can be used for electric strikes. And it's just a very inexpensive bridge rectifier that will, once the lock is locked, it doesn't need the full power in order to stay locked. And this will keep it cooler. It will also extend the life of the lock set. So whenever you have a solenoid operated fail-safe lock set, highly recommend using the Smart Pack rectifier to extend the life. And if you have masonry walls, some hollow metal frames come with mortar guards, but especially when you've got the electric through wire hinge, you want to have a mortar guard in the back so that when they fill the frame with grout, you don't have to worry, your wires can still fit in that little pocket. We'll take a look at the operations narrative. The operations narrative is critical on any opening that has electrified hardware. The reason that it's critical is if you think about what is a function of a classroom function lock set, and where does that come from? A classroom function lock set has free egress from the inside. The outside handle is locked and unlocked by the cylinder. That comes from ANSI BHMA, the standard. A storeroom function lock set, no matter what manufacturer, if I specify a storeroom function lock set, the outside handle is always locked, the key will retract the latch, and the inside is free for egress all the time. Those come from ANSI BHMA, and those are standards for mechanical locking functions. But with electrified hardware, unless you put an operations narrative describing the outside function, the inside function, what happens on fire alarm, what happens on power loss, the electrician is not going to know how to wire this up. So this also protects you. If you're writing a specification and you write a good operations narrative from your notes from a meeting with the architect and the owner, and you're describing what happens at the opening, and they approve it, the electrician wires it up the way that it was approved, and then the owner changes their mind, you have something that's already been approved based on what was discussed at a time before. And so if there's any cost change to do what the owner wants now, you can wire up electrified hardware so many different ways, but it may cost more money after the fact. Knowing about it ahead of time and how that opening is to function also helps you verify that you have selected all the appropriate hardware items. So in this case, the valid credential at the card reader unlocks the door momentarily for entry. Free egress at all times. The fire marshal is looking for that because if there is not free egress, then you need to meet one of the special locking arrangements or some exception in the code, and that needs to be noted. The lock is fail-safe and is unlocked on loss of power. Lock is tied into the fire alarm system to simultaneously unlock and is capable of being unlocked at Fire Command Center to comply with stair reentry code. So while this is free egress at all times, because it's a stair, we have to note the code requirements to tie it into the fire alarm system and have it unlocked at the time of fire. And one more time, here is the hardware set. The power supplies could go in this set, but they were supplied by a different division. And typically I would have a note in here that the power supply is by security integrator or whoever. that's something that I don't know why I didn't have that in there. I did have it in the actual set, but these were modified when I built this. So if you're wondering where is the power supply, it was supplied by a different section. Do we have any questions on this opening? Okay. The next one is a CT scan room. So whenever you hear a CT scan room, you should think that the door is going to be lead lined, and it's a pair of doors. We'll take a look at where it is on the floor plan first. The next opening that we will take a look at is this pair of unequal leaf doors going into the X-ray room. At first, I just want to show the plans. We are on the second floor, area A of the large hospital. And before I look at what I'm going to do for hardware on an X-ray room, I want to see, is it within a back of house or locked and secured area? This pair of doors going in does have card access. And then this is the corner of the building. We scroll up, and this pair of doors is secure. This pair of doors is secure. You can go into the sub-waiting room and talk to the receptionist who guards this door. This door has card access going into, so it is a secure perimeter. And this pair of doors is also secured with a card reader. And all the other doors are within the suite. That tells me that chances are very good this will not need to be a locked room because we're already behind a secured perimeter. Okay, so we don't have to worry about locking these doors. They're within the secured perimeter. They are an unequal leaf pair. This door does swing against the wall. This door leaf could also, well, sort of kind of swings against the wall, although there's a cased open frame right there. But it's non-rated, but it is lead lined. You can see the L in the wall type. You could look that up to figure that it's 1/16 inch lead. And depending on where the lead is within the door, the lead could be either centered in the door or it could be underneath each veneer on the outside. That does affect your hardware options and what you choose. I like to hang heavy doors like this on pivots. It takes all of the weight of the door and puts it into the floor. And so we did use pivots here. We'll take a look at the hardware set before taking a look at the video. There is door closers on both leaves, and there is an overlapping astragal. It is a lead-lined astragal that is supplied by the door people, and so therefore we do need a coordinator. This one is the Soffit mounted coordinator. Last week we did see what the gravity coordinator looks like, so when you watch the video, I do zoom in and make sure that you get to see up close the little triggers that hold the active leaf and the inactive leaf where it will hit and release. The mounting brackets are as required. If the closer is mounted parallel arm, then you would need these brackets. So when you're writing a specification, it's better to include the brackets, and then if they're not needed, the detailer would omit these and schedule regular arm instead of parallel arm. This way you can get more doors in the same set. 4 foot wide active leaf, 2 foot wide inactive leaf. Okay, so for hang the door, I mentioned that I like to use pivots because they take the weight of the door and put it into the floor. The active leaf is 4 foot wide, and with a 16th inch lead, there are charts that you can find online that tell you how much weight per square foot. But these will take doors that are heavy up to 800 pounds, and a 4 foot wide, 7 foot tall, 16th inch lead line door is going to be very heavy, somewhere in the 600 pound range. And you do the same thing for the active leaf as you do for the inactive leaf. As I mentioned from the class on Thursday, where we had the unequal leaf patient bedroom door. For symmetry and look and frame prep and door prep, it's best to keep the same hanging method on both leaves, even though they're unequal. You need one intermediate pivot when you have a door that's up to 90 inches in height, and then one additional intermediate pivot for any 30 inches or fraction thereof. This is the L147 set by Rixson with the ML19 intermediate pivot. This is a typo, by the way. The 605 should be 626. This is not a bright brass. It's satin chrome. It was a typo. The special thing about the L pivot, instead of the heavy duty, this is a heavy duty pivot, but instead of just the 147, the screw holes are staggered so that if the lead is in the center of the door, the screws will not penetrate the lead. And that's how you know. There was a question, how do you know which hardware items need to be lead lined? It depends on if they're going to penetrate the lead or if they're going to take out any of the lead from the door. So for the lead line, this isn't an actual lead line hinge or pivot, but it is specifically for lead line doors, because the screws will not penetrate the lead, whether they're in the center of the door or if it's underneath the veneer. The automatic flush bolt, we're just using top only. And as you could see from the video, when the active leaf hits this latch, it pushes the bolt up into the head. The coordinator is the soffit mounted. The 1672 is for a 72-inch wide opening, but when you're detailing this, you do have to be very specific about how wide the active leaf is so that the filler bar and the spacing of where this is appropriate. So even though it's a 72-inch wide opening, unequal leaf does affect your coordinator. We didn't need the mounting brackets in this case because these are so that if you've got a parallel arm shoe, your screws don't go right through the coordinator. It's a separate bracket. But because these are mounted regular arm, if you were detailing this, you would just omit the mounting brackets. The HP 3010 Hospital Latch, they did want these doors to latch even though they don't need to lock. And the 5-inch back set is nice, so if you're carrying anything, you can use your elbow, push or pull the latch open. This is the same latch we used on the patient bedroom doors. The HPSK was just the trim. The M28 is lead lining, and you do need to specify whether push or pull side. So when you this fits in a 161 prep, but with a 5-inch back set. When you cut the lead away, you're going to protect by adding lead into the back of this. If it's a regular mortise lock or a mortise lock with a rose or a cylindrical lock with a rose, you can lead wrap the rose or you can lead wrap the case. But the lock set is pretty much, you should specify lead lining for any kind of lock set because you're removing material from the meat of the door. The door closers, delayed action to give them a little extra time to move the patient into the room or for the patient to walk into the room or whatever when they're moving equipment in and out. We use the SA self-adhesive mounting, which is also referred to as mastic mounting for the armor plates. You notice there's no screws here. it's pretty common. We don't want to penetrate the lead with the fasteners, and so it's very common to use the self-adhesive mounted for your protection plates. And the standard 40-inch high, 2-inch LDW, less door width, the detailer would have to figure for the inactive leaf what that width is going to be, and on a separate line, put the size for the armor plate for the active leaf. Heavy duty cast wall stops. Seal the door. The overlapping astragal is part of the wood door, and you can even see the lead in the center of the astragal. But the actual smoke seal that was applied around the perimeter is just the Pemco S88. You do need to make sure to coordinate with the door manufacturer to know that you've got the astragal or who's supplying the astragal, and then that's why we used a coordinator in the first place. So if we take a look at the hardware set, the only note is to mastic mount the protection plates, which is built into the part string of the armor plate. Do we have any questions on the lead line pair or lead line doors? I have seen in some cases, and they did not want to do this here, but in some hospitals that I've done, they want a door position switch so that if somebody happens to open the door while the equipment is being used, that it would shut off the x-ray equipment. They absolutely did not want to do that. They use a sign on the door, and they have a control room where you can visually see that there's somebody in there, and that's how this hospital chose to do it. But I have seen it before, and you may get that question, hey, can we put a door position switch so that if the door opens while the machine is in use, it can shut it down? Any questions on this? Okay. The next is a pair of doors in a corridor. We'll take a look at on the plan first. They are double egress cross corridor. This is on the first floor, and this is pretty common in a hospital, whether it's a horizontal exit, which this is a 90-minute pair of doors, so this is part of a horizontal exit, whether it's a horizontal exit or whether it's a smoke barrier or whether it's just a door, a pair of double egress doors in the corridor that are non-fire rated. Most commonly, you will see them on hold open, and this symbol right here for this architect indicates that they are on magnetic hold open and tied to the fire alarm to release. There is no card access on this particular pair, but sometimes you'll see the symbol for card access. Other things that you're looking for, these doors do not have the symbol for PP, for push plate, or any kind of power operator. So these will be just regular door closers, and they're going to be held open. The door will be held open. Let's take a look at the hardware set first. They're 8 foot wide by 8 foot tall, 90-minute rated, magnetic hold open. We'll look at the video before we break down the hardware. Wide doors and heavy doors, we want to spread the weight of the door over the height. A continuous hinge does that nicely, and it also helps to protect the edge of the door. The Marcar stainless steel HD315 was selected and was used consistently throughout for all of the cross corridor and corridor type openings in this facility. And by being stainless steel, it helps with the cleanliness portion of it, as well as protecting the edge of the door and hanging the door all in one. Exit devices, both leaves are required for exit purposes because it is a cross corridor pair and we have more than 50 people in each direction. And the less bottom rod so that we, for cleanliness, don't have any holes in the floor, no strikes, no place to gather dust. Even though this may not be the cleanest portion of the hospital, very consistent throughout. Pretty much once you have a standard, you'll use it throughout the rest of the facility with very few exceptions. On fire-rated doors that have less bottom rod, there is a heat-activated door bolt. They call it a turkey popper or popper. And when you have, you can see the M55, we'll look at that in just a second, but it's located typically 12 inches above the bottom of the door. And when it heats up to whatever the temperature, 450 degrees within the first, it takes about 5 minutes. This will release a spring-loaded bolt that will hold the doors together. By that point, you're seeking another exit. There are plenty of other exits, and if there is a fire that's here that's that hot, there's no way that you would be able to get through this opening anyway. The Corbin Russwin ED 5470, less bottom rod, top latch only, exit only. The traffic in the United States is going to be down the right-hand side. So left-hand reverse / left-hand reverse for the handing on this pair of doors. And you don't want to put any pull trim or any kind of trim on this leaf because first of all, if you're going to do locking trim, it wouldn't make any sense. Anybody can push on the exit device to get through the opening. So having trim, nobody's going to pull the door open. That goes against the flow of traffic. The flow of traffic is push on this door from this direction, coming down from the other side, you're going to be pushing on the door from this direction. The M110 is the flush end cap, which is heavy duty. Exit devices do project off the face of the door, and when you're pushing stretchers, beds, carts through the opening, you want to have a heavy-duty end cap so that if it gets hit, it deflects instead of bending or falling off. So this will take considerable pounding compared to the standard end cap. And I don't believe it's any upcharge. You can double check that in your Corbin Russwin or Sargent catalog, but I don't believe that costs any extra. It is something you have to specify though. The M54 is sex nuts and bolts for through bolting, and M55 is the less bottom rod. The same closer we've been using throughout the facility, the heavy duty Norton. And again, when you specify, you can put regular / parallel arm as required. They're both the same price, so the person doing the takeoff will price the same closer, but when they detail it, they will detail it actually whether it's regular arm or parallel arm. In this case, it's parallel arm with a heavy duty, it's a heavy duty parallel arm. The kick plates, sometimes on double egress doors, you'll put kick plates, you'll have 4 kick plates instead of 2. If this were a wood door and in a more aesthetic spot, it might make sense to put kick plates on both sides. There's nothing wrong with that. That is an option. This is on the first floor, so it really, they didn't feel that it was necessary. The gasketing, not required, but always a best practice. And anytime that you have a cross corridor or any kind of corridor door, rather than use the S771 like we did on the patient bedrooms, these get a little more abuse and a little more higher frequency. So the brush, the 18061 by Pemco, coordinating the brush color with the door, coordinating that with the architect, whatever their choice would be. But the S88 around the perimeter and then the astragal seal, you can seal both sides of a double egress pair or just one side. The astragal is not going to inhibit the free use of either leaf. And the magnetic hold open, the 998 has a 1-inch projection with a 2 5/8 armature, which is pretty standard for a 90-degree open door like this. Sometimes you may need a deeper, this one has the junction box surface mounted on the wall, and the conduit and everything is surface mounted, but this works nicely if it's got a junction box that's recessed or surface mounted. Either way, it'll work. They need to choose the voltage. I always put verify voltage here in the spec, and there is no cost difference between the 3 models, but whether it's high voltage tied right into the building system or low voltage tied into the access control system, either way, just verify and make sure that you detail that before you order it. Here is the hardware set one more time. And do we have any questions on this type of opening? There will be a lot of double egress doors in a hospital, especially in a very large facility. Smoke and fire compartments can be no larger than 22,500 square feet, and you need double egress openings at the beginning and end of every single fire and smoke compartment to go from one compartment into the next. My email address is on the screen. If you have any code questions, if you have any hardware applications questions, please feel free to send me an email. I want to thank you for your time and attendance. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.